Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning, councillors, and those that have come and joined us here in attendance and also who might be watching online. So our special meeting today has been called as we gather here on Palawa land, the original and ongoing owners of this place, Launceston. I open today's meeting at 10:30. Please be seated. We do have two apologies today from Councillor Gibson and Councillor McMahon. So we'll move forward to 2, which is the commencement time of the meeting. At 2.1, we've got that the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2025, Regulation 7.1. A meeting is not to start before 5 p.m. unless otherwise determined by absolute majority or by the Council Committee by simple majority. The decision requires an absolute majority of Council. So, in saying that, the recommendation is that Council, by absolute majority, determines that this special meeting is to start as soon as possible after 10:30 on Tuesday the 23rd of December. Somebody please to move. Councillor Palmer has moved. Councillor Harris, a second. Contributions? All those in favour? All councillors present, the motion is carried. And we note that with the commencement of the meeting, it is also being recorded, and we ask for those to be respectful. Declarations of interest at 3. We've got the Local Government Act of 93 at section 48 says a councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in any matter before any discussion on that matter commences. Any declarations today? Great, we'll move forward then. Planning Authority. Under the provisions of the Land Use Planning Act and approvals of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to the items in this agenda today being agenda item number 4, with the development application at 4.1 being 160 to 172A Bathurst Street. Before we do get to the recommendation, I do have some listed speakers. If I could please start with Louise Millwood. Thanks, Louise. Just to the microphone in the middle.
Thanks, Maddie. My name's Louise Millwood. We do have very little time, so I'm going to be quite brief, obviously. There are major concerns with regards to the amount of traffic that has been listed in the traffic assessment put forward by the developer. It confirms that there is an expectation that the traffic in Crown Street will rise from 150 units, 150 cars a day, to 1,234 cars a day, which clearly is contrary to the safety and efficiency in the road code, which is listed at table C3.1, which must be referred to make sure that this development is safe. In anybody's terms, an uplift of 150 cars to 1,234 cars is obscene. It's a heritage area. There are small children in the area. There is a school close by. There is nothing within these documents that satisfies that that is safe. It's nothing that demonstrates that it meets the rail and road code. The parking also presents an issue. The developer has commissioned this traffic assessment plan. On pages 63 to 64, the developer's plan itself says there is absolutely no parking. It says there is 0 parking at A and B for the calculations, and yet the planners, in their calculations on page 26 and 28, have magically created another 37 spaces to add into their calculations, and they say these are required spots. They haven't been demonstrated as actual spots, just required spots. So again, that contradicts the information that's been presented with the DA in the IAA on pages 52 and page 63 to 64. Excuse me, I've been rushing about like mad this morning. No, you're going fine. Again, it refers also to the pedestrian access and talks about public transport. The closest bus stop is over on Wellington Street near the LGH, one who has the clients at this place will have mobility issues, so they will have to cross 8 lanes of traffic to get to this place with a mobility issue, unless they transverse along the footpath, which is approximately 1 kilometre. Crown Street, which is mentioned as being an access point to this development, at some points the pathway is 1.3 metres wide when it has to be 1.5 metres wide to transgress if you have a disability. That's mentioned on page 37. So again, draw reference to the data that is contradicted right throughout the TIA and the plans assessment. There is page 52 of the TIA draws reference to the amount of traffic. Page 53 draws reference to where that traffic will be going. Page 58 confirms that the council, the TIA met with the council and confirmed there was already problems with Crown Street and Frankfurt Street Junction to do with traffic. Page 63 refers to the own developers' documents that say there is zero parking at A and B for their parking calculations. It also, page 65 draws reference to the fact there is no parking mentioned for the 10 to 15 staff. Page 32 to 34 of the plan's assessment draws reference to the road and rail code, and on table C 3.1 it refers to an acceptable uplift of 10 to 20 units. So 150 cars to 1,234 is definitely way outside the 10 to 20% acceptable uplift. The responses at page 35 through to 37 sidestep, again, this rail and road code C 3.1 and the safety that's associated with. The uplift from a quick calculation is over 800%. 150 cars to 1,234 cars in the street the size of Crown Street. You imagine that in Upton Street, past your front door, all of a sudden there's 1,200 cars instead of 150. The calculation again on page 36 is very different to what the developer calculated for parking. If I'm paying for a report, I would hope that I have the most possible parking allowances in it, and yet the council planner's assessment magically appeared 37 more car parking spots that the developer couldn't find. Beggars belief, really. Again, on
Thanks,
the plan...
we might, the bell has gone, so we might just... One more sentence.
One more sentence. Clearly, the assessment has not demonstrated that the development meets the planning code or the road rail code.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Carmen. Ms. Frelick?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I won't beat around the bush. My name's Carmen Frelick and I live at 3 Twining Street. And I too am concerned about the amount of traffic, but there is something else I would like to draw your attention to, and that is down the laneway, public laneway where people have access, the local residents along that section of Bathurst Street have access to their garages at the back. And in that laneway there is a community garden, and where that community garden is, they're planning to put in a fire escape. And I was wondering, and there's a really lovely grapevine growing there, and I was wondering, can the fire escape, which aren't used that much really, can that be moved down to some double doors where the doorway has already been put in to, so, you know, I mean, it seems silly to put in a fire escape in a lovely garden, which can, the fire escape can be easily moved up further, or can it be put over the other side on Crown Street, or can it be moved further down? Because it's a lovely garden, it's doing well, it has been doing well for years, it's well maintained, well looked after, and I'm just concerned about the possible demise of it. So, yeah, that's my bit. It's just mainly about the garden.
Great. Well, thank you. And with that question having been asked here in public question, the councillor may very well ask that question on your behalf.
Right,
Cool.
okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Stephen.
Hey everyone. I'm a local resident, developer, and I've got a lot of interest in Launceston City, how to better it and improve it in many different ways. So I'll be quick today, just speaking in favour for the Keys development, only for many different reasons, but I believe it's the best use for that building. We've got a lot of vacant large buildings in the city, and we're struggling to find people and appropriate people to fill them. And I think this use, only being a physio that has from 300 to 400 movements at max per day, is the proper use for that building. And it's a global business that's coming down to Launceston to help our economy. It's going to give us jobs. I also live in a street just around the corner that's quiet, but I can't park out the front because there's nurses and doctors parking there, but I chose that. And I just like to appreciate what the developer's done. It's not myself, but who hopefully will employ us if this gets ahead, is he spent an extra $1.2 million on the development to put parking underneath the whole building. 90% of the building is parking underneath, and he's gone to a great expense to put that underneath so it didn't affect the Crown Street and areas. He's invested a lot of money, and if we keep on saying no to things like this, we'll still be Launceston like it is today. And I just hope everyone has a good think about it, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr Simeone. Thank you. I've got Kerry. Mr Hayward.
G'day, I'm Kerry Hayward. I live at 154 Bathurst Street. This development doesn't meet the planning code. To meet the code, it needs performance criteria, and it's your role to make sure it does. I think it fails. As mentioned before, they did a report for this thing to show that they needed 61 parking on site. The report said there was 0. They mentioned you can get there by public transport. As mentioned before, the closest public transport is really 1 kilometre away. It's not really designed for people who need rehab. They mentioned carpooling. You carpool to go to dinner, you don't carpool to go to the doctor. You know, they talk about ride share. There's nothing on the plan to show where a drop-off or pick-up point for road share is. The permit that we're looking at today, magically 42 spaces appear at this development. And I'd like any of you to see on a plan where they can show there's 42 parking spots actually on that development today. It mentions that there's limited on-street parking, but then in the report it says that 15 staff are going to find somewhere to park. That would be ridiculous. There would not be 15 spare parking spots within 1 kilometre of that building. There's 5, they say there's 5 parking spots in Franklin Street. There's a for lease sign up which shows that those 5 parking spots belong to what we call the old computer store. So they're counting up those parking spots twice. The plan for the medical centre shows there's 30 parking spots underneath, but there's 25 spaces somewhere else that are not shown on the plan. All the numbers for parking don't add up to what is needed there. They're assuming that there is already parking there. There's no parking there. They don't mention that Crown Street's only half it's only one way. They talk about 40 vehicles per hour, but understand this is really going to be in a 10 minutes window when people arrive and people leave. So you're going to have cars every 15 seconds. I mean, no parking, a 900% increase in traffic, a car every 15 seconds, vehicles driving around looking for these magical parking spots, people walking on footpaths not to code, vehicles banked up on major roads, which the council's already admitted there is a problem. Future use of the site, there's 3 more tenancies to go into this building, and there's no mention yet of their parking or their thing. Disruption to working businesses. You know, this area is a heritage listed. And in closing, this is just a disaster waiting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Tim. Mr Rickson.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Rickson. I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and my business partner, Brad Langrake, and Travanco Engineering to make a brief impact statement on the proposed development at 160 to 172A Bathurst Street. We are not against development in the Launceston area. We actually rely on it for our business, but feel it needs to be done responsibly. We are concerned for the negative impact this development will have on our business in the future. Over 40 years, we've been successfully operating a steel construction business out of our current location at 2224 Crown Street, which is adjacent to the proposed development in a very small historic steelwork area. We have a good working relationship. We have had a good working relationship with all previous tenants, including structural steel, metal fabrication, crane hire, and most recently, trailer manufacturing. We currently employ 7 staff and are concerned with the long-term implications and viability of our business to operate under these new proposed conditions. I personally carry the responsibility of the safety of my employees and feel concerned for the added health and safety risk to them, the residents of Crown Street and the other users in the area. In closing, this development application does not meet the planning scheme and should not be approved as it stands. As was said to me yesterday by visitors of the site, right development, wrong location. I would welcome all parties to visit our site and the development location to see the complexity of the proposed traffic movements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I've got a final speaker, Adam. Mr Smith.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Adam Smith. I'm also here on behalf of Travanco Engineering. A quick note that I'd like to add that I happen to have here. Mr. Simeone said during his speech that he's pro-development, and if the developer chooses him to go ahead with this, it's beneficial. He's already actually been chosen for this, and all of his bunting and security fencing is already around this building, so he has a vested interest in this going forward. I just wanted to add that as a separate thing. Our main concern is the removal of 2 car parking spaces directly in the front of our business that our customers and service vehicles use. And I'll bring you to a page from the Launceston City Council Roads and Transport Frequently Asked Questions with parking restrictions. The City of Launceston does not support the change of parking restrictions to benefit a single business. Now, they're clearly doing that in the development because they're removing these 2 car parking spaces from our business to look after the new business. And that's because of the turning access in and out of Crown Street for the new proposed car park. If the turning circle isn't big enough, why can't they widen the doors on the building that's there? Because there's sufficient space to be able to do that. The proposed development has operated from heavy industrial fabrication to trailer manufacturing for over 50 years, with cars, utes, service vehicles, and previously there's been a trailer manufacturing company there, and we see it daily. They've been backing utes and vehicles with trailers in and out of this access point successfully with our truck and our vehicles and our customers parked in these 2 car parks, and we have never had to move them. It's never been an issue, so why is it an issue now for the turning circle in and out of the car park? No workshop has been conducted by the council, so all of the councillors can physically come and see the site. It's okay to read it on the plans, but to actually see it and understand the scope, we've been very lucky that a handful of councillors here have come to site to have a look off their own back. So once you physically see it and get a picture of the complexities of it and the increased risk that's going to have, you can start to paint a physical picture, not just a mental picture. The car parking spaces is also a concern with us because, again, the proposed solutions are carpooling and ride sharing. Nobody does that for medical appointments. It's just not practical. Public transport, according to the Metro website, the 3 closest bus stops are 750 metres away, remembering that this is a physio and rehab centre, so people are going to be mobility impaired, probably shouldn't be walking that sort of a distance to get to where they're going. The council have stated multiple times in their report that they encourage walking and physical fitness, but again, this business caters to rehabilitation. People aren't going to be in a position to be able to take that up. The big thing also for us is the vehicle movements. So they're stating from 121 vehicles per day to 1,234. Statistically, it's a 919.83% increase. The road and rail states an acceptable uplift of 10 to 20% is allowed, but not 919.83. We'd like to demonstrate, or we'd like the council to demonstrate to us with some evidence on how this increase can be deemed safely acceptable, because any risk matrix would say that that's just not completely practical at all. So again, like Tim said, we're very pro-development. Our business relies on it as steel fabricators, but it's got to be done properly, and we don't understand why this development needs to impact on our business and our customers. It's well spoken that there's no parking in the area. So our customers are going to have to park 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 metres away to be able to come and access our business. So the risk for us for financial detriment moving forward at the cost of removing these 2 car parks, it shouldn't be, we shouldn't wear the brunt of that, and it shouldn't come at the cost of Travanco Engineering. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do we have any further speakers that aren't noted? Okay, well, we might move forward to the recommendation then. With that recommendation being that council, that a permit be granted for business and professional services and sport and recreation, change of use to a medical, physiotherapy, consultancy and gymnasium, including associated works at 160 to 170A Bathurst Street, Launceston, subject to the published conditions. Somebody please to move. It's been moved by the Deputy, seconded by Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor, opening statement.
Thank you. I'll start by, I'm moving the motion for discussion as much as getting to a decision on it. I just wouldn't mind starting with a couple of questions if I could. Just could the planning officers talk me through the 150 to 1234 car movements that are planned to happen as a result of this, and, if you like, the relative safety of those based on the comments that have been made in the audience?
So in assessing the vehicle movements, we were provided with a traffic impact assessment, which has been prepared by a suitably qualified person to meet the traffic standards. So this is a traffic engineer essentially, and that found that the vehicle movements were acceptable in that location. And within that street, there is maybe some issues on Bathurst and Franklin Street, but they're pre-existing issues that are not being generated by this development.
Thank you. Okay, well, I acknowledge those comments and thank you for those. And I looked through, there are about 5 or 6 discretionary uses that are, discretions that are in the DA, designing and siting of signs and illuminated signs, which don't seem to be creating a lot of issue in regard to the public, and I think they've been well explained by the planners in regard to it. Pedestrian access and traffic generation at a vehicle movements mainly off Bathurst Street, I think, is not off Wellington Street. I look at it, I have been and visited, not met the people at Travanco, but I have been there twice, once as little as this morning to have a look through. And I could start with a Councillor Harris story that I used to live at 158 Bathurst Street, which is the house that's sort of right adjacent to the back door of where the garden Mrs. Frelick was talking about. And I hope that we can do that. And I think there's a position where there's condition to try and improve the fire exit to ensure that we can maintain the vegetation. And I must admit, I lived there when Jack was in full swing, vehicles moving up and down heavy vehicles moving up and down Crown Street a lot. And even listening to the commentary there, they had no trouble with people reversing in and out with trailers. To me, that's got to be a far more dangerous activity than somebody driving straight in and straight back out of a vehicle. So I think from a safety perspective and a pedestrian, it's a very narrow street. It's likely to have more traffic movements noted, 1,234, but they're all going to be going in a forward direction. They'll go in and park and then come back out in a forward direction. And I imagine in the state of the street, they're not going to be racing down there at 100 kilometres an hour or 50 kilometres an hour either. It's more like a 20 or 30 kilometre an hour street, in my view, looking at it from the purpose of safety and so forth. To me, developing Launceston, we've got a huge site here, which used to be an industrial site, and developing in something that is going to be done through the new development. I know about Kaiser. My son went there many, many years ago to deal with an injury. Yes, I think the issue about catching buses, walking there and so forth like that, I don't think that's likely outcome. There's going to be people who are going to be driving there. So I just think that in relation to the fact that they have enough car parks based on the definitions of parking requirement actually on site, they're actually improving the parking arrangements. For me, the parking within the area is not created by any of the businesses, it's created by the hospital, looking at people coming and parking there. And we had this conversation when we were looking at the health precinct on the other side of the road. I still think that we as a city need to be looking at more on the parking aspects of it. I look at the Taswater site on the opposite side of Franklin Street there and still have a view that it never fills up and that if it does fill up, we'd have plenty of warning and be able to get car parking out of there. So I would really like the council to take forward a conversation with Taswater in regards to how we may well be able to multi-use the detention basin for parking so that we actually improve that, so we can start to improve the parking arrangements in the area. So I think parking is there. It's an issue. It will continue to be an issue while we have a hospital precinct there. I don't think that this development is actually going to exacerbate that any further on the basis of the car parking that is going to be provided by the developer in relation to it. And to me, it's a very good use of the site.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Yeah, I have questions too, but so happy to perhaps ask some questions. Just in regard to the 2 parking spaces that are existing Crown Street and their removal, what is the basis for that? Because, as others have said, there does seem to be sufficient room in there to exit and things. So can you explain from an engineering point of view why we've had to take those 2 spots away?
excuse the limp, I'm a little bit stiff after Carol's. The traffic report notes that the increased traffic that will be coming in and out of the site. So currently, well, not currently, the site doesn't operate at the moment, but previously it's been an in and out arrangement. So a lot of vehicles have left that access. That first access just coming into Crown Street is actually being removed as part of this. So this becomes the sole two-way access point on Crown Street. So the increased number of movements to facilitate entry and exit and the swept paths are why those are identified as being removed. So when you have a vehicle coming in and being able to have full turning in both directions, what we don't want to be doing is putting a restriction on turning movements that you can't turn sort of right out of the other side or left or right. You want full turning wherever you can facilitate that. So with the increased number of movements, that's what we'd be looking at having.
Thank you. Just on that, there was a suggestion that perhaps the door could be made wider for the car park. Is that an engineering challenge, or is that something that as a building, as a development application, we can't consider? We only have to consider as it's been presented?
I'll answer the engineering one and perhaps let the planner answer the planning side of that. It would be a challenge. I'm sure it is possible. It would have an impact, however, on the car parking layout that exists inside the building, because when you look at the plans, you'll see that the door is quite close to the parking spaces themselves. So the wider you make the door, the more you're going to actually impact on the number of parking spaces you can provide within the building and still have functioning aisle space. There's probably a heritage thing if you start opening and widening the doors, I imagine.
Thank you. The other question I was just going to have on that one was in regard to the fire escape door and where it is to be located. I also visited the site this morning and saw the community garden, although it's probably only, 40 centimetres wide, growing some grapes and others plants there. Is it, again, a requirement of where the fire door is proposed, or is there just that's where the developer chose to put it? And can we, as a planning authority, have any impact on saying we want the fire escape to be in a slightly different location?
Yeah, the location of the fire doors is, we spoke to the applicant about this, it's a building code requirement. It's not a planning requirement. We can't make them move it, but we have suggested that if they could consider an alternative location, that they should, and we've provided advice on the permit. It is, the laneway is an existing right-of-way for a number of the buildings as well, and it serves a lot of some of the other properties as well.
I'm happy to take others to have their questions before I speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've just got a question. I think there's a part of the report which I'm confused about myself, and it's to do with the parking, the amount of spaces on site. If you go to page 28, I think it starts on page 27. No, I've lost my... Right. It has B, number of car spaces required for existing approval uses. If you then go down, it has C, in accordance with table da-da-da. And you can't... We somehow get to C equals 66 spaces required. I think a lot of people have honed in on that 66, those 66 spaces. I'm just trying to figure out, if you continue to read, it actually says, it sounds like I'm doing algebra here, but N equals A plus C minus B. Now, I think there's where the confusion is, it's saying in one spot we've got 66 spaces required. Further down it says there's actually only 34 spaces required. Could we just get some clarity about how we get there and how that's figured out?
Yeah, thanks. So what we're looking at is, we've got to look at the number of existing uses on the site. So the site also includes what was another computer store and also NDIS office as well. So in the calculation, we look at how many uses are existing approved on the site, the number of provided car parking spaces, which is 6, and then we look at that existing shortfall. So the total generated by all the uses is 66, but this use is only contributing like a number of uses, a number of car parking spaces to that. So on balance, it actually ends up complying with the car parking requirements.
Just another question in terms of, if the developer puts in a traffic impact assessment, once that comes to council, do we do our own in-house assessment, or do we reference that off anything? Or do we just take that as gospel? How is that figured out once it comes through to us?
Yeah, so when as a planner, we look at making sure that it's been prepared by a suitably qualified person, and that they're confirming that it's been prepared in accordance with the sort of national standards. Then we also have our infrastructure team have a look at that and review anything, and particularly in this instance where we're looking at changes to the council's road assets on Crown Street and Franklin Street as well for the crossovers. So they've taken an interest in that as well. That's why we've got some here.
So I've just got a couple more questions. So it's fair to say we do our own, or we have done our own assessment of this development?
Yes.
Yep.
But also in review of the professional advice that's been provided as well.
No worries. Thank you. I think I've only got one more, and it's to do with Travenco Engineering. I sent an email. I'm wondering, obviously, I've run a business myself. If I've been using the front of my business for 30 or 40 years to unload steel, and that's a pretty important integral part of my business, is there anything the council can do, a loading bay? I'm not sure, but is there anything we can do to ensure that they can continue to use that space? Obviously, I think there's yellow lines proposed along there. It'll be illegal for anyone to park. Yeah.
Council in August of 2023 actually approved a loading zone in response to inquiries and concerns from a business in that site. It was noted at the time that would be proposed and should alleviate some of the concerns that existed there at the moment. I think it was for a different business that might have been operating on the corner. There were inquiries around the installation of a loading zone at that point. That wasn't deemed safe, and there was some yellow line that was installed, and there was, subsequent to that, there was also a loading zone installed further up the street. It is something that council, separate to any development application, does receive from time to time requirement or requests for those things, and they are then assessed in the context of the street and the need for those.
And ultimately, there's nothing. Is there anything to put a provision in now?
It would need to be assessed through our transport team. I'd be reluctant at this point to say that it's something we could do. We could take it away and investigate what other alternatives are there. But without some more information, I probably wouldn't be prepared to say at this point.
Further questions? Councillor Petrie? Further questions then?
This is another one of those disappointing moments, and I've used that many cliches. This is another one of those times when a predetermined, this has already been predetermined. All we're doing is wasting my time and my colleagues' time and these people's time. It's pretty obvious that the decision has been made by this administration, right? By people who don't live in the area, right? My colleagues have little choice but to go along with the recommendations because, one, they either don't do the homework or they don't know. And I'm saddened that this will be at another time. I won't be supporting this today, not because it's not a great use for an old building, And the mistakes, like a lot of mistakes we continually make in this council, there should have been, that business stopped a long time ago, as an engineering place. We've now piggybacked off rules and what's that. A lot of people in that area have done a lot of work, and once again, we're going to ignore all the people of that area for the sake of another new development. Now, sure, it's a good development, and God only knows we need to do as much as we can to get people back to work. But what about the community? And my colleagues here seem to constantly forget we are representatives of the community. How in the love of God did we get put into a position where we get people, like educated people, well-meaning people, who are giving their opinions based on rules? Now, and for the last time this year, I'll quote Gandhi.
Point of order, this is a planning authority.
That's right. That's right. We'll abide by the rules, and I wish my colleague here would take note.
Councillor Pentridge.
Yep. I've got new batteries, so I'm probably talking a bit louder than I should be. Now, I'm disappointed once again. We're going to ignore the community that we are supposed to be representing. And, we'll abide, my colleagues can abide by the planning authority. The sad part is, we as members of that represent the community, we should be refusing this, and sure, they can challenge it, and the community overall can pay the costs. But we're once again going to turn around and put the burden back on the residents of that area and make them go to all the trouble of objecting to this proposal. It's a bit of a sad event, and we continue to do it. So I won't be supporting it. My colleagues can do what they feel they should be doing, but this is a bit of a setup. It's been predetermined before this even started. But anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. I've got Councillor Preece.
Thank you, Mayor. I, with a couple of other councillors, visited the site yesterday and spoke with the residents regarding their concerns for the area. It's an area that I've visited many times before, walking the dog, walking the children, etc. Can someone just clarify the document that Adam has brought with him today? The question related to the City of Launceston will not support the change of a parking restriction for the benefit of a single business. If that is on our website, can someone say that or confirm that that's still a relevant statement?
Thank you, Councillor Preece. CEO.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just looking left at any planning officers. Having not got the document in front of me, I don't like to pass a comment without all the information in front of me, unless you've got a response.
So essentially the assessment that we've made today is against a planning scheme, and in the lodgement of the application, consent was sought for the removal of those 2 parking spaces, which was approved, was assessed by our infrastructure department, and it was deemed necessary for the safety and efficiency of that access.
Thank you.
So therefore, this statement that we have on our website is untrue, even though it's relating to the planning scheme. It's a false statement. Because it's contradicting what's on our website.
Thank you. Councillor Preece, can you provide me a copy of what it is you're referring to? As I said, I like to have the facts. Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Priest. As I said, facts and context are very important. The statement on the website actually does not relate to the planning authority or the planning scheme, and we are currently sitting as the planning scheme. For example, if someone made an application to our engineering department to change a driveway, this would come into effect, and we're not sitting as the planning scheme when that is in play. So whilst that statement is correct and it is valid on the website, it's not valid when we're sitting as the planning scheme.
Councillor Walker?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few questions. Sorry, I missed the call earlier, but I was still pondering. First of all, obviously it's on the or periphery of another zoning and in a residential area. There's quite a few houses in that area that don't have off-street parking. I presume there's a number of permits in the area. Is the consideration of this DA in any way impacted by those considerations? For example, when it comes to lighting, traffic movements, operating hours, signage, they're all things because within 50 metres there is residential, inner city residential properties. The parking situation for them, a lot of them being little cottages that don't have driveways, has that been considered in this development application?
Yeah, so there's a number of use standards within the planning scheme that deal with the hours of operation and impacts on the residential amenity, and it satisfied the acceptable solution for all of those. Then in terms of the car parking, as I've mentioned before, through the calculation, it was found that there was adequate on-site parking for the new proposed use. So we don't need to consider existing shortfalls in parking that there might be in the area, which is not that surprising for an inner urban area.
Another question, if I may, Chair. I note in the assessment you reference the intersection of Bathurst with Franklin Street, and say that advice was provided to the applicant that the City of Launceston and Department of State Growth were considering the management of the left turn from Bathurst Street onto Franklin Street, and that no changes to either were considered necessary for the proposed use. So why was that necessary to be involved, I suppose, in the assessment in the first place?
So in the traffic impact assessment that was provided, it was identified that there was issues with those junctions, and so in part of the assessment we followed up with Department of State Growth as the authority for Bathurst Street, and also with our own traffic engineers, just to see whether any changes would be needed to those junctions for this application, and they deemed it was not necessary because they're existing deficient junctions, and that they are currently looking at what changes may be needed regardless of whether this development proceeds or not.
Thank you.
Further question, Councillor Harris.
Yeah, just in regard to some of the conversations we've had regarding the use of the site as a physiotherapy and a gym, we've said there are 34 spaces required for that, but only 30 provided. Is that because we don't have to provide as many spaces as what the formula says? Let's answer that one first of all.
So there's two uses. We've assessed it as two uses. So if you look at the plan, there's a number of individual consulting rooms. So we've looked at the number of practitioners for that, and then also, so that would fall into a business and professional services use class, which is calculated differently to a gymnasium, which is what we've calculated for the open areas where they've got equipment and the mixed room there. So in that calculation, sorry, I can't remember the exact number, but it's around 30 spaces that are required for those two uses of the site.
Thank you. So that seems like 30 would be a sufficient number for that, the way that it is, because this is not a gymnasium where you might have, doof music and classes of 20 or 30 people with one instructor. This is more one-on-one physiotherapy with gym or machines to assist with the physiotherapy. So does that prohibit a possible future use, without coming back to this table, of a more traditional gym taking over the space at some future time and therefore perhaps have greater number of classes, and with all of the associated problems, with a large number of people trying to be there all at one time to meet the start of a class, etc.
Yeah, so the intention with this application is, as you say, less intensive, it supported physiotherapy, and so, but that it would allow for future use or development as sports and recreation for a gym as well, as per the definition.
Without coming back to us, which is the interesting part of all of that. I think I'm out of questions, so would you want me to speak now, or do you want to ask anyone else? Okay.
Question one is, I was just wondering, what would the address on the business be? Because when I went site visiting, I had the Bathurst Street site, and we were driving around Bathurst Street, and I'm thinking like, well, where is it? So I got confused, for one. I had Google Map as well. I was trying to do all that. So what would the business what would the address be for this business? Will it still have the Bathurst Street address on there? So you've got people going around that really fast and a lot of traffic along Bathurst Street trying to find the business?
When the tenancies aren't changing, so it would still be the existing address. It is occasionally referred to as 164 Bathurst Street. We've got the numbering differently on the application, but ultimately that's not a planning matter. That comes into our numbering system, and that's not proposed to change as part of this application.
Okay, so and question two I have is with medical DAs, they usually say 4 car park per practitioner. Does that still apply with this DA?
Yes, so we've calculated the number of practitioners and then multiplied that by 4 for the consulting rooms.
Now, I was just wondering whether, I've been to physios myself, and the ones that I've been to, once you finish one-on-ones with the physio, they then put you into a reformer class where there's about 6 to 8 reformers per class, where there's one physio takes all 6 to 8 through their rehab exercises. So I was just thinking, as one practitioner or one physio in a class of about 6 to 8, what are we called? Clients, wouldn't they then need more than 4 car parking per physio?
Yes, so that's why we've calculated the gymnasium area where they've got the Kaiser machines. They've got, similar to a reformer machine, we've calculated that based on essentially a gymnasium or fitness centre. So we consider the use to be fairly closely aligned with the sports and recreation definitions.
Regarding that as well, now I heard one of the speakers mentioning that there is it 3 other tenancies that hasn't been occupied yet? Or is it 3? Let me have a look. And I'm just wondering whether the car parking has been calculated into this DA for those other 3 tenancies.
Yes, so there's this tenancy, and then there's also another computer store, which I believe is vacant at the moment, and also another office. So they've still got existing use rights, and so they've also still got existing car parking demand, and so someone else could move in there and occupy that with the same car parking demands, and any other change of use would need to be considered as a separate application and the relative merits of any changes to the parking demand.
And last question, is there a drop-off zone? Do they have a drop-off zone in the DA?
No, there's not one proposed.
Right, okay.
Thanks, Councillor Kine. Any further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Confirming, are staff car parking included in the 34 for?
It's just a base number. It doesn't differentiate between whether it's clients or staff car parking. So it can be used however the occupiers see fit.
Just to follow on from the Deputy's question, so if all 15 staff decide to park on site, is there enough adequate parking for clients?
Well, that would be a matter for the operator, because if they don't have enough parking spaces for their clients, then they may have difficulty with their clients. So we figure they can manage that in the way that they suits their business best.
Any further questions? Councillor Walker?
Just in terms of the discretionary use for the commercial zone and the justifications around that, I note that leads towards discussions around the Launceston as the principal activity centre under the land use planning scheme, under Northern Regional Land Use Planning, LUPA. I mean, even the existing businesses in the area, you wouldn't exactly say are commercial, or some of them are, some of them aren't. It's a mixed bag, I suppose, in the area. But can you explain how we justify this discretionary use being one that hasn't been seen in the area up until now?
So the discretionary use requires consideration to whether it impacts on the retail hierarchy, and in the retail hierarchy, Launceston is seen as the principal activity centre. So I consider that would consider that a commercial use in that area that is for a health service, as demonstrated through all the other the hospital precinct across the road, all the other uses around there is fairly consistent with what you'd find on the edges of an urban city. The other consideration is for a commercial zone is, does it provide for services that need higher areas of car parking? And as we've discussed, there's not a lot of opportunity for some of the commercial businesses around there to provide a great deal of parking, whereas this application is actually providing the required number of car parking spaces. So it's a fairly appropriate use for the location.
But just to follow on from that, the use listed as discretionary must not compromise or distort the activity centre hierarchy, having regard to the characteristics of the site and the size and scale of the proposed use. How do we say that it doesn't impact the characteristics, which I'm presuming is the existing characteristics of the site, and the size and scale of the proposed use, I guess, is in regards to the existing size and scale of the use in the area. So how do we justify those changes under that discretionary assessment? I mean, we say it complies. This is under 17.3.2 discretionary uses, and we say that it complies. The proposed use is for business, use class, consulting rooms, blah, blah, blah. But we don't really address in that complying the characteristics of the site or the size and scale of the proposed use.
Yes, so we've also considered it in terms of what the regional land use strategy expects for an activity centre, and in the response I've included the detail of that, and that includes providing business, government administration, leisure, entertainment and tourism services, providing a comprehensive range of services and facilities. It also provides a high level of quality urban design, and we find that the adaptive reuse of this building contributes to the character and amenity of the City of Launceston.
Further questions? Councillor Harris, you're up to speak.
Yep, thank you. And thank you all for the questions, and thank you to those who've come along today to listen to the discussions. Clearly, parking is very important to this whole development, not only for it to succeed from a business point of view, but also for the general area. When I did my reconnaissance this morning, I did find that there was quite a large amount of 2-hour parking, not necessarily in Crown Street, but in Margaret Street and some of the other appropriate areas, Bathurst Street, etc., all of which were underutilised this morning at after 9 o'clock, probably because they don't satisfy the requirements of those who work all day in the hospital. So what you'd see is the traditional changeover of those parking spots, as you would hope. Similarly, they wouldn't suit the parking of any staff who may work in the building as well. However, it would be up to the building owner to set their own scheduling of appointments, and I know within my physio where I go, they certainly don't make all appointments on the hour and the half hour. They spread them to 10 minutes before the hour, on the hour, and 10 minutes after to enable those to come into the parking spot and find a free spot before the next one has moved out. And I'm sure that it isn't part of a planning scheme we can dictate to that level, but I'm sure a good operator would soon work that that was the way of making sure there were available parking spots for their clients. The only thing that somewhat worries me on this one is that we are signing into its use of it as a gym into the future without coming back to me or back to this table, which could see a large removal of the offices and large-scale gym there, which then may see changes to the parking demands based on whatever the new operator may do. But we can only assess it on what it is today. And as others have said, this is a global brand on what is primarily a physiotherapy business that has gymnasium-type equipment to help with that physiotherapy. So today I will stand to support it, and I look forward to hearing what the other councillors will say as well.
A further question from Councillor Britton. To speak? Yep, Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. I did go down and see the people in Crown Street and on Bathurst Street the other day. There's been a lot of conversations, a lot of ideas around parking, things like that. I'm just going to keep this quite quick. I'm not going to say it's kept me awake at night, but I've been giving it a lot of thought. When you go down there on the street, you can see that this is going to impact all the residents, and it is going to change how those streets are used, how the business gets its deliveries. It's going to change everything. However, we can't bring our emotion into this debate. If you look at the information that's in front of us, it complies with the scheme. Now, it's not I reluctantly will be voting yes today, and we can only do that and we can only make these decisions based on the information that's in front of us. There are 30 car spaces there. The developer has actually put in a car park underneath the building. I believe if this were to be tested externally, that it would still pass as well. And therefore, as our role and my role as I sit in the planning authority, I will be voting yes for it today. But that is not to say that I don't appreciate the impact that it is going to have on the neighbouring businesses. It's a very tricky spot, but that's where I am. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Kai.
Yes, I'd like to thank all the speakers for coming today, and I'd like to thank the planning officers as well for doing up this wonderful response to all the questions and concerns on here. Now, I think this is a great DA and it's a wonderful use of this space. And I have to say that I am not going to be supporting this DA for 3 reasons. One is the loss of amenity to all the surrounding residents around there. So there is going to be a huge amenity change due to traffic too, as the traffic. So with 1,234 cars per day, and yet, like, for example, also the address as well. So address seems to be a big concern for people who doesn't know the area very well. So we're trying to find, like I said, I was trying to find the address yesterday, and we're going through down Margaret Street, up Franklin Street, going back around Bathurst Street, because that's where Google Maps told me to go. It was around the corner. So as we're going around that corner, I was trying to tell my husband, can you find a parking? Is there parking around that area? And he couldn't find any parking. And so he said the best he could do was zip down Twining Street, and we parked at the first parking spot at Twining Street there so that I could wander around to find this address for Bathurst Street, which is not on Bathurst Street. Now, as I walked down Twining Street and I went down to Crown Street, we sort of look back up Twining Street, where there's both streets are very, very narrow. And if there is cars trying to go out from Twining Street and they've parked or they've come to the intersection up the top of Twining Street there isn't very much space for any car turning in to avoid that car. So if that makes sense, you've got a car there, we've parked there because there's parking, I think it's loading, no, just normal parking, I think it was, there. Is it 2 hours or something? And I can almost see if there's a car trying to come into that street as well and there's a car there, they're either going to hit the back of my car or the back of their car is going to stick out sort of back on Bathurst Street, where other cars coming around at that speed with the amount of traffic is going to hit the back of that car trying to turn. So eventually, that I reckon, council, if this is approved, I reckon eventually council's going to remove all parking around both Twining Street and Crown Street, off-street parking, which then leads to like I said, the loss of amenities for the people living or working there around there at the moment. And the other thing is, to me, this is a big safety concern. So with the added traffic from, I think, 100 at the moment to 1,234 a day, if we average that out, let's just say it's not really going to happen, but let's just say the traffic is spread out evenly per hour, we're still looking at about 100 cars per hour going through those little streets. And if it's a smooth in and out, there's no congestion, 100 car traffic is still a lot, let alone you've still got all those cars waiting to turn in and out back either onto Bathurst Street or onto Franklin Street or even back down to Margaret Street. There will be queues. Living down the other end of Margaret Street, I know that Margaret Street gets pretty busy and it gets pretty congested, especially in the mornings during school hours or after school hours. I've waited at the Patterson Street turning into Margaret Street for 45 minutes at the lights there. So, and because from Riverside, Lagana into town, you've only got the two ways to get in, which is Patterson Street and Brisbane Street. Those two connections there, you've got queues queuing quite far up. And
point of order. We're nearly in a different suburb now.
Not quite nearly that. There's not that far. I have travelled, I use Margaret Street all the time, and I'm just saying the traffic there on Margaret Street is very congested, maybe more at certain times, but we're looking at 1,234 traffics per day. And like I said, even if we spread that traffic out evenly per hour, during the day and every hour, we have 100 cars going in and out of there, let alone there's the peak and off-peak times. So I'm just saying, personally, I think this is a great design, great place to put the physio there, but the traffic going through there is not safe. So I've got safety issues, traffic issues, and eventually not even eventually, as soon as this is in, there's going to be the loss of amenity to all those surrounding residents in that area. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair, and I rise to say that I won't be supporting this development application today. Through via you, Chair, to steal the words of Councillor Pentridge. You know, we are here to represent the community, and unfortunately, this really pits the community against the community, and obviously it's a difficult position for any councillor to be in because they can hear the merits of both arguments. I think even the representatives, shouldn't speak for them, but I'm sure many people can appreciate the merits of such a development. It's specifically the location, and for me, it's specifically coming down to the line of questioning in regards to discretionary uses and that assessment of whether this does comply in terms of the characteristics of the site and that it must not compromise or distort the activity centre hierarchy having regards to those characteristics of the site. I think quite clearly those traffic movements that were just being talked about will distort the characteristics of the site quite dramatically. I think in terms of that many movements per day, considering the amount of parking spaces available, that will distort the characteristics of the site. And look, in some ways the fault can be taken back to Launceston Council. We know there are commercial zones like this. We know there are light industrial zones that back onto residential zones, and we perhaps haven't done enough work to reassess those zonings and to help the community envisage future uses for those areas. There will probably be a time when the businesses that are there now won't be there. It might become residential. It might become different types of businesses in there. But right now, it's an area that has that zoning with no particular direction, and so proposals will come and they will go. A different proposal for this might have had far less impacts in terms of traffic and in terms of parking. And I don't agree that we can relate this development to what is across the road, what some people call the health precinct, because it's just a minor detail of 6 lanes of traffic that you have to cross. And for anyone, and I'm sure people who live and work in the area have tried to cross that road, it's like that game of Frogger, really, where you're trying to get over to what we refer now to as the health precinct. There is no connection at all. So there's no way that any public transport on that side, you would have to go down to an intersection to get across, but nonetheless, you see people crossing there all the time. I'm interested to see that we are talking to State Growth about that intersection in general. It would be lovely to try and find some solution there, because people park on one side to walk to the other side, and every day you see people trying to cross there. Other suggestions about the water detention basin. I know that Jerome Muir has discussed that idea as well, of having parking there. They're all great things for the future. That should have been done by now if this is what we want for this particular zone and its uses. We should be providing alternatives for people who want to establish businesses in that area. We've provided none. This business has attempted to provide some of that parking, and I think that is laudable, but I don't think it is sufficient, judging by the amount of movements that are being suggested. I think that parking will by and large be insufficient to cope with the amount of movement of traffic. It will put undue impacts on the character of that area and on the businesses in that area and on the adjacent inner residential zone as well, which already, of course, has impacts. I'm sure in the middle of the day, it's virtually impossible to get a parking spot around there anyway. So having regards to all that, I will not be supporting it in regards to specifically 17.3.2 in the planning scheme and those discretionary uses, and our assessment of whether it complies as a discretionary use, that it complies with not compromising or distorting the activity centre. Thank you, Chair.
Any further contributions? Councillor Pentridge? Was this a question or
no, it's
you have
a small comment.
Spoken?
Well, maybe the question I should ask my learned friends here,
Councillor Pentridge, don't let emotion...
whether they, maybe they ought to relook at their roles. I was elected by this community to represent them. I appreciate my colleagues have advanced. Some of us want to be politicians. Obviously, some of us want
Councillor
to go into
Pentridge, let's not personalise
We're
it.
here to represent the community. And I don't believe that that's what we're doing. So, and if this matter, the law must be abided by. And if if this today, I've already indicated I can't support it. Not because it's not a good idea, but because I represent my community. And if this needs to be challenged, it should be challenged by someone other than the people who it's going to affect. I don't think it's fair. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. So they're just taking that, we'll just take that as a question as to if this was to be unapproved today or rejected, it would be at the discretion of the developer to take to TASCAT and have it tested in the next formal tribunal process.
That's correct.
Thank you. Further contributions? Deputy Mayor, to close.
Thank you, and I do take umbrage to the fact that we are all here representing our community, Councillor Pentridge.
Representing the planning department.
But we do sit here as a planning authority, and therefore we have rules and regulations under which we must operate. Our officers give us advice in regards to how that planning scheme operates in regards to applications that come in. 98% of those are done under delegation without dispute. The difficult ones come to our desk, and we need to make those decisions. And I'm very happy if people come up with issues which are planning related to determine an application is not suitable for approval. So I'm more than happy when that's the case. I stand here and I take on board all the comments that have been made by the people in the room, and I feel sorry, and if I was sitting in their place, I'd probably be doing exactly the same as what they've done today and come to object to it because it doesn't suit their purpose. The reality of it is our planning officers have made a full review of the planning scheme against the proposal. They've given us information in regards to traffic movements. They've given us information in regards to parking. They've use within there. They've given us their professional advice in regard to how those things played out in regards to that. I look at the fact that this business at least is coming on and is bringing its parking for what it needs for this particular application. I appreciate the 66 relates to the whole business, but there's existing use rights in regards to the tenancies that are already in place. So therefore, they aren't counted in determining the parking requirements of this particular activity. So looking through that process, we've had a TIA that's been delivered by a professionally qualified person. That's been assessed and reviewed by infrastructure within our offices. Our planning department have gone through and given great detail in regards to this. So my view is that we are here to make a planning decision, whether we like it or not. And therefore, my decision is that our officers have given us good reason why we should approve this application today, and I am therefore going to support it.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Okay, so we're putting it to the vote then. All those in favour of the recommendation? 3, 4, 5. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is a tie. The motion is lost.
Point of order, Chair, do we need to move a amended motion and reasons for refusal?
No, through governance, we did have this brief little discussion earlier that it wasn't required. Just goes to the next process if required.
I have a concern.
Just wait, we've closed the matter.
No. Point of order.
Yeah.
I have a concern because during my learnings of planning authority, tie votes are not good for the council. Okay, so inductions. When I did the inductions for planning authority, if there is a tie vote, it means that council's got to cover the cost of everything. Could someone look into?
We can have a look into that, Councillor Kai, but the decision's been made now. So we are just grabbing some clarifications through governance around the planning authority and the process. Okay, councillors, just for clarification, having worked through the planning team and governance and the CEO, tied vote is lost. End of discussion around this item now. The next process will be up to the development around any further representation that's made around this development, and we'll be informed of that the same as the general public will, I imagine, through that process. So thank you. But Councillor Kai, thank you for your point of order, and we will have some clarification around that, perhaps with the CEO offline around tied votes and costings and so forth. We'll touch base in a moment. Excellent. Okay. So we now no longer sit as Planning Authority. Meeting closed at 11:45. Thank you.